Mrs. Claus here, scientist at large. And today I'm going to be doing a demonstration for you. And I'm going to be asking you some questions about that demonstration. I'm going to be asking you to predict and make a hypothesis. And then we're going to talk about it. So let's get started. Okay, so I have here 2 beakers of water. The clear one is the fresh water. And the one that looks a little bit cloudy is the salt water. And we are going to be deciding, I'm going to put some ice in there, put that up here, looking at it this way now. We are going to decide if the freshwater ice or the saltwater ice is going to melt the quickest. So I want you to be thinking about what's going to melt the quickest. I'm going to put 3 cubes in each beaker. That's the fresh water. This on the right is the salt water. So I want you to observe. I want you to decide, do you think it's going to be the ice cubes in the fresh water that'll melt first, or the ice cubes in the salt water that will melt first? A little brighter. Okay, I paused it for a few minutes and now it's been about, like 2 minutes or so. And now we are seeing it's starting to melt. You notice anything? Which one is melting before the other? Anything that you notice? Okay, I'm gonna pause it again and come back to it in a few minutes and we'll see where we're at. Okay, it's time for another observation. What are you noticing? I can also show it from the front here. I think it's better from the top. Take a look. What do you notice happening? You tell which one is melting quicker. Give it another minute or two and we'll come back. Okay, time to make another observation. What are you noticing? Can you tell which ice cubes are melting quicker? Fresh water or salt water? Fresh is on this side, salt is on that side. Here's another observation. It's been about a minute. Notice how the freshwater ice is a lot smaller than the saltwater ice, or the ice in the salt water. The ice itself isn't salt. The beaker is full of salt water. Okay, we are almost finished. Notice how the freshwater ice is just a small, tiny amount left. It's almost all melted. And the freshwater ice is melting, but at a slower, the saltwater ice is melting, but at a slower rate. So why would that be? Did you guess it correctly? Did you say that the freshwater ice would melt quicker than the ice in the saltwater? Or did you guess the other way? Well, now we have to determine the why. So be thinking about that. Why would that be? Why would the ice in the freshwater beaker melt quicker than the ice in the saltwater beaker? Here's one last final look at the freshwater and the saltwater beakers, and notice how the ice in here is just a teeny tiny little piece and a little teeny tiny piece there. And then in here, the saltwater beaker, notice how much bigger, and get it out here, playing a game here, how much bigger the ice cubes are yet. Okay, now let's do a demonstration of the why. Why did that happen? Okay, now I have taken the ice out that was left in the salt water, and the freshwater ice has melted. And now we're going to show you the why that this happens. So let me put some ice cubes in there again. I'm trying to pick ones that are about the same size. And maybe another little piece here and another little piece there. and going to show you what happens with the fresh water. When the ice begins to melt, it makes more fresh water, and the cold water will sink to the bottom. So I'm just going to put a couple of drops of blue food coloring in. I actually got my thumb blue as well. So let's put a little bit in there and watch what happens. Put 2 drops in there as well. We will look at it from this angle. See how the fresh water beaker, the cold water from the ice sinks to the bottom, but notice how the cold water, that's the fresh water, that when the ice melts, that's fresh water because that's fresh ice water. That water is floating on the top of the salt water. See how it isn't sinking? One, it's sunk right to the bottom, and the other one, it's just sitting there floating on the top. The salt water is actually holding up the fresh water. The fresh water is the ice that's melting, and the salt water is actually holding up the fresh water. See that? Notice there's no, the blue on the salt water here is not sinking. Okay, so we are finished with our experiment today, and I would like you to be thinking about our first lesson, which is, goggles are crooked there, which is talking about feedback and Arctic ice, and as it melts, what kind of effect that will have on the environment and on the earth. And so I want you to be thinking about ice that would be at, like, say, Lake Michigan in the winter time, and ice that would be at, for example, the North Pole. And think about why the ice at Lake Michigan would melt quicker than the ice at the Arctic North Pole. So I want you to use a science description and some science vocabulary, something that you can participate in from what you observed today in our demonstration, to how you can apply that to what's happening on the earth with our polar ice caps versus the ice that's near fresh water. So I will be putting that assignment on Google Classroom, and I will be looking for you to write me a science explanation. Till later. Bye.